The task is open. 20 minutes gone, nothing starts. Not because you don't want to, not because you're lazy. In 2009, Nora Volkow at Brookhaven National Laboratory ran PT scans on ADHD brains. She wasn't studying attention. She was looking at dopamine receptors, the ones involved in motivation. What she found, the signaling structure for "this is worth starting" was depleted, not motivation, a signal. That distinction matters more than it sounds. By the end of this video, you'll know the exact mechanism that creates the freeze, and why everyone who pushed through it wasn't stronger. They found a different route to the same signal. Your brain runs on two dopamine types. Tonic is the background hum that keeps the system online. Phasic is the spike that fires when something new or urgent or rewarding shows up. In ADHD brains, that background hum is chronically low. Volkow scanned 53 adults with ADHD and 44 controls. D2 receptor availability in the accumbens and midbrain was measurably lower. Those are the regions that generate the start signal. When a task is boring, no phasic spike arrives. A typical brain can coast on its baseline. An ADHD brain has nothing to draw from. The system waits. Not because it refuses, because the account is empty. Was the problem that you didn't want to start, or that nothing fired? The ADHD brain isn't passive in front of that open task. It's scanning for a signal that never shows up. That's the first layer. What's underneath explains why a looming deadline can unfreeze everything in 40 minutes. That account doesn't refill on its own. In 1983, Sharon Zental and Thomas Zental at Purdue published Optimal Stimulation Theory. The restlessness, the avoidance, the compulsive tab opening, the brain self-stimulating against under-arousal. Under novel or challenging conditions, the performance gap between ADHD and neurotypical kids nearly disappeared. The brain wasn't broken, it needed stimulation that routine tasks never deliver. The person cycling through browser tabs before touching the report isn't procrastinating. They're doing what a brain does when arousal drops below threshold, hunting for input. When was the last time a deadline created the exact focus that 3 hours of trying couldn't? That wasn't you failing. That was your brain doing the only thing left. A midnight deadline doesn't fix the task. It manufactures urgency. The spike boredom can't produce. Waiting until the last hour isn't avoidance. It's the nervous system cobbling together the one resource the task withheld all day. The freeze isn't failure. It's a brain that ran out of currency, and then it gets stranger. But here's what most people miss. The freeze doesn't arrive alone. It brings a story about you with it. One you've been repeating since school. In 2005, Thomas Brown at Yale mapped 6 clusters of ADHD executive dysfunction. The first one he called activation, getting started, deciding what to start, sustaining the effort to start. In Brown's clinical sample, adults with ADHD named activation as their most impaired domain more often than any other cluster, independent of IQ. The distance between "I want to do this" and "I can start this" isn't a character flaw. It has a name. It shows up on scans. Most people with ADHD never hear that. They hear the other thing. Lazy. That word arrives before any research does, and it calcifies. A signaling deficit gets filed under moral failure. Every time the freeze returns, the story plays again. Shame isn't neutral here. It activates the threat system, which competes with the prefrontal cortex. Activation loses more ground each time. The people who called you lazy were right about one thing. Your brain wasn't engaging. They were wrong about why. How long have you been telling yourself that story? Some of you are thinking, convenient excuse, that everyone who procrastinates could claim a dopamine deficit. Fair push. Here's what the data says. The freeze is specific to tasks with no novelty, no urgency, no personal relevance. If that describes your to-do list more than most, the pattern is real. Here's the thing to stop believing right now. Most adults with ADHD still carry that framing. The freeze feels like a choice. But Volkow's scans, Zental's theory, and Brown's activation work all point to the same mechanism. The freeze is a brain waiting for a signal that boring work never sends. People who push through tedious tasks don't have stronger character. They found a way to generate the signal their neurochemistry required. That's not virtue. That's a workaround. Most people still frame it as discipline, but the scans, the theory, and the data agree. The freeze is a brain doing exactly what a brain without enough signal should do. It waits. It doesn't fail. The practical version: stop trying to generate willpower. Start generating signal. Novelty, urgency, or a 10-minute timer that creates artificial stakes. Any of them works. The account isn't empty. It just needs a different kind of deposit. Back to that open task. 20 minutes, nothing starting. That wasn't you refusing. A system with nothing to spend. Back in Volkow's scanner, the receptors weren't gone. They were there, quiet, waiting. The problem was never that you didn't care. Caring alone couldn't make the signal. If this reframed the freeze for you, the next thing worth hearing is, if you can't ask for help, you probably grew up too fast. Same pattern, one layer deeper.